Danville, Vermont, year 1971. They said no one had stepped inside Willow Creek High since the winter of '62, the night the snowstorm cut the power, and everything inside went deathly still. The building sat untouched on the outskirts of Danville, half devoured by the woods, its brick walls chipped and windows blackened by time. Locals avoided it. Whispers carried stories of lights flickering in the gym at midnight, of voices echoing through its empty halls, of chairs moving when no one was there to move them. But teenagers never fear what they cannot see. One overcast afternoon in the fall of 1971, three curious friends, Tommy, Rachel, and Marcus, decided the town's most infamous dare was too tempting to resist. What began as a harmless, thrill-seeking prank soon turned into something else entirely. Inside those walls, time doesn't behave like it should, and neither does the darkness. The sun was already low in the sky when Tommy, Rachel, and Marcus reached the edge of the woods behind the old school. Vines strangled the fence, and the entrance gate creaked as if exhaling a breath it had held for years. The air felt colder here, thicker, but they laughed it off. "Urban legends," Marcus muttered, shoving the gate open. Tommy clicked his flashlight on. "Let's find that gym everyone talks about." They found a shattered window behind the cafeteria and crawled through one by one. The air inside was stale, heavy with dust and the scent of rot. Lockers lined the hallway like sentinels, most rusted shut. Faded posters still clung to some of them. Prom announcements, science fair winners, frozen moments in a place forgotten. Rachel stood still for a moment. "Do you hear that?" The boys paused. Nothing. Not even the sound of birds outside. The silence was total. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally loud as they moved deeper inside. They passed the front office, where old files lay scattered across the floor like something or someone had rifled through them in a panic. Then they reached the main hallway and saw it. A classroom door, slightly ajar, a faint creaking sound, moving ever so gently. Tommy pushed it open. The lights above them flickered. The air turned ice cold and scrawled across the chalkboard, clear and fresh like it had just been written. "Don't look behind you," Rachel gasped. Marcus turned around. Nothing. But when they looked back at the chalkboard again, the words were gone. The trio stood frozen in place, their breath visible in the icy air. The chalkboard was now blank, not even a smudge. Rachel stepped forward, her voice a whisper. "It was there. We all saw it." Tommy nodded, gripping the flashlight tighter. "Let's not split up. We stay together. We came for a thrill. Let's not end up in a campfire story." They moved down the hallway toward the old gymnasium, the floor groaning under every step. Dust blanketed everything, but ahead of them, they noticed something unsettling. Footprints, fresh, leading deeper into the school. "Who else would be here?" Marcus muttered. They followed cautiously. The prints led to a locker door, number 17, slightly ajar. Rachel reached to open it. A sudden clang echoed from the other end of the hall. They all jumped. Tommy aimed his flashlight back. The beam trembled as it revealed a toppled desk, one that hadn't been there before. Marcus turned back to the locker and screamed. Locker 17 was now wide open, empty but humming. A low, vibrating hum, like a faint growl from deep underground. Tommy yanked Rachel back. "We're not staying here. This place is wrong." But as they turned to leave, they heard it. Laughter, childlike, echoing down the hall, distant but unmistakable. They weren't alone, and whatever was here was watching them. They ran down the corridor, past broken lockers and shattered windows, their flashlight beams bouncing wildly across the decaying walls. But the laughter never faded. It followed them, like it was crawling through the very air. Marcus stopped near the old library doors, panting. We need to hide just for a second, regroup." The library had long been stripped of books. Only empty shelves and overturned chairs remained. Dust danced in the flashlight glow, and the cold in the room felt alive. They stepped inside and closed the door softly behind them. Then came a voice, a girl's voice. "Why did you leave me here?" Rachel spun around. No one, but the voice had come from the far corner where a single desk stood upright, clean, untouched by dust or decay. Tommy stepped toward it. "Don't!" Rachel began, but it was too late. Slam! The door they had entered through slammed shut behind them. All three froze. Then, slowly, the shelves began to shake. Every single one of them, rattling violently as if unseen hands were trying to push them over. Rachel screamed as the desk in the corner flew backward into the wall, shattering into splinters. From the shadows came whispers, whispering children, hundreds of them, all around, as if the walls were breathing their voices. Tommy tried the door. It wouldn't budge. "We're locked in." Marcus pointed to the window. "That's our way out." They smashed through the glass with a chair and crawled out onto the fire escape, gasping for air. Only then did the whispers stop. Only then did they realize. The library door was now wide open again, and someone was standing just inside it, a silhouette of a young girl in a school uniform, staring at them. But when they blinked, she was gone. The fire escape creaked as they climbed down, every step echoing through the thick night air. Once their feet hit the ground, they didn't run, they didn't dare. The building seemed to be watching them now. "I say we go back to the car," Marcus whispered. "We've seen enough." Tommy shook his head. "No, we need to finish this. If we leave now, we'll never stop wondering what we ran from." Rachel hesitated, eyes still fixed on the library window above. "I saw her, that girl. She looked real." They re-entered the building through a side entrance. The air inside had changed. Heavier, more electric, like a storm was trapped within the walls. Marcus checked the map they found earlier in the front office, drawn crudely on yellowed paper. "Room 202. That's where all the reported sightings happened back in the day." They climbed to the second floor. The walls were peeling, graffiti scrawled in chalk and charcoal. "Help me" had been etched repeatedly along the hallway, always in a child's handwriting. When they reached room 202, the door was already open. The temperature dropped instantly. Inside the room were old desks, all aligned perfectly, too perfectly, considering how ruined the rest of the school was. On the blackboard, in neat cursive, were the words, "Take your seats." Rachel's breath caught. That wasn't there before. The moment they stepped into the classroom, the door slammed shut behind them again. This time, they didn't panic. They turned their flashlights to the corners. Nothing. "Texto padrone," then came the voices again. Children whispering, giggling, and a loud thud. One of the desks moved. Another thud. Another desk, pushed across the floor by nothing. Then chalk floated off the blackboard tray and began to write. "We never left." Suddenly, one of the windows shattered, and a loud scream filled the room, not from outside, from inside the walls. Marcus backed into the corner. "They're in the building. They never left." Just as quickly as it began, everything went silent. They tried the door. It was unlocked. No hesitation this time, they fled. But as they reached the stairwell, they all heard it, clear as day, directly behind them. Class dismissed. They didn't stop running until they hit the ground floor. Their footsteps echoed like war drums against the silence, but somehow they weren't the only ones running. Heavy steps seemed to trail just behind them, always just out of reach, but never far enough. They reached the main hallway, lit only by the moonlight cutting through dusty, cracked windows. That voice, it wasn't a child, Rachel panted. It sounded like A man. Marcus turned pale. I think it was the principal, the one who... Don't, Tommy cut in, not now. Rachel pointed to a broken sign hanging by a nail near the janitor's closet. It read, Stairwell to lower level, storage and boiler room. You thinking what I'm thinking? Tommy asked. Marcus sighed. Basements are always where things go wrong. But they had no choice. Something or someone wanted them there, and part of them needed to know. They descended into darkness, each step colder than the last. Their flashlights barely cut through the dense air. The basement was massive, far larger than it should have been. Pipes snaked across the ceiling like veins. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was alive. They turned a corner and stopped. There in the center of the hallway stood an old wooden desk, untouched by time. A single photograph sat on it. 3 students smiling. Marcus leaned closer and gasped. They looked just like us. Rachel's hand trembled as she picked it up, written in pen on the back. Class of 1969, the lost ones. Then came the sound of children laughing again, but this time it came from everywhere. The boiler in the distance roared to life, rusty and long dormant. Pipes began to shake, dust falling from above. Lockers down the hall started slamming open and shut violently. Then a figure appeared at the far end, tall, wearing a burned suit, face twisted and blackened like old charcoal. Tommy grabbed them both. Run! They turned and bolted, ducking flying chairs and falling ceiling tiles. The figure never moved fast, but every time they looked back, he was closer. They made it back up the stairs, into the hallway, blinding moonlight through the front doors like salvation. Just before stepping outside, they heard one final whisper behind them. You were always one of us. As the 3 burst through the decaying front doors of the school, the chilling night air hit them like a wave of ice. They didn't stop, not until they had crossed the fence and ran halfway down the gravel road leading back to town. Only then did they collapse, panting and wide-eyed, the silence outside deafening after the chaos they'd just escaped. But the school, it stood quiet again. No more laughter, no more footsteps, just the creak of old wood and the rustle of trees. I don't understand, Rachel whispered, clutching the photograph they'd found. They look just like us. Same clothes, same hair. How is that possible? Marcus didn't answer. He stared at the school's top window, Suite 3B, the place where it all started. In that window, a figure was watching them. Not moving, just observing. Its face was impossible to make out, but they all saw it, and none of them would forget it. The next morning, the school was surrounded by police and curious townsfolk, but by the time the authorities stepped inside, it was empty. No burned suit, no laughter, no photo, not even the burned message they'd seen carved into the wall. Willow Creek High had gone silent once again. Rachel, Marcus, and Tommy swore to never return, and they never did. But years later, rumors started again of a group of kids who had gone into the school and never come out. Different names, same story. Some say Willow Creek High chooses who to let go and who stays forever.